Working on the Javelin today. I'm doing a little addendum to the subframe connector video. I didn't really like the way it turned out with the rough weld in the bottom here, so I did a bunch of grinding, some more welding, some more grinding, trying to get a sharp edge on the bottom so this deal here looks like one piece of metal. Here's that torque box right in front of the leaf spring, and on the other side the floor is actually buckled up a little bit right here. We tapped it down and then welded this seam. And on this side it's kind of hard to tell, but there's a crack right there in the undercoating. So that's definitely a stress point. I'm going to wire wheel off this undercoating and weld this seam as well. Here it is cleaned up. You can see 3 spot welds from the factory. There's a couple more over here. And we'll go ahead and run a bead on there. This will definitely strengthen it. Here's what that's looking like. I'm definitely liking this nice straight leading edge in the bottom here. I think that looks so much better. I'm gonna wait for a warm day now so I can clear this garage out and paint everything under here that I have so far. I'm on to cleaning up the floors. Not really looking forward to this project. Bought myself a new respirator. These belts will be coming out here in a minute. It almost looks like somebody used a glue in parts of this. For instance here, like that was a big drip of something there. And I'm going to take a wire wheel to all this stuff and try and get her cleaned up, primed, and painted. There are screws holding the carpeting down. Here's one holding that asphalt sound deadener down. I'm actually not going to be putting that asphalt back in here. I'll be using a brush primer and a brush paint on this. I'm a couple minutes into cleaning up the floor and found a rip at the base of the shifter here in the metal, so that'll have to be welded. And there was a dent in the wheel well that can easily be straightened. And the sound deadening material on the firewall is just completely falling apart. And I got some new stuff and I was going to put that in with the carpeting. And I pretty much decided to take the dash back out at this point, just to ease in the installation of that. It goes all the way across the front. That'll make it a lot easier to clean up all this asphalt and stuff too. Here's what that's looking like once again. It probably took me about an hour to get it out of there. I was able to do it without breaking anything. I have somewhat of a baseline clean on the floor now. It was about 5 hours worth of wire wheeling. There's a lot of that cement type like insulation that was sprayed in here that had to be removed. It was pretty difficult. You may recall I replaced this foam when I had it out the first time, and I kind of missed this. The foam in the cedar box is completely shot. And I was looking in there. There's leaves and all kinds of stuff in there. It's going to have to come out to replace this material behind it. I went ahead and ordered some new firewall insulation, and I got a new blower motor for the fan there. And go ahead and take that heater box out and clean up behind there, get that firewall painted, and get some new insulation on it. It's a 2-piece insulation. Some goes over there on the other side of the steering column. I have a new gasket kit coming in the mail as well, so we'll get this all sealed up. Looks like the heater core is just kind of floating around in there too, so we'll see if the gasket kit cures that problem. Looks like she's held in by some Phillips head screws. I think I'm counting about 5 of them. There's an L bracket up there too. We'll take those off and see if it pops off. There's a total of 5 screws on the inside. I took a sheet metal screw out right here. Not sure if that has anything to do with it. And then there's a nut holding all the grounds on right there, and that has to come off. It looks like she should come right out. I'm going to see if she comes out now, and I'm going to try to do this without disconnecting the cables. There she is. It pivoted right off of there. How efficiently do you think that heat was working? Here's a look at the box underneath it. You can see all that crap in there. I'm going to get that all cleaned out. And then I'm going to put some power to this fan and see if it works. I got a new fan off Rock Auto, but it has a big hole in the side. And I just realized that that's for some sort of cooling tube. Just using my crappy battery charger. The ground's hooked up there. Sounds like there might be some crap stuck in there. Actually sounds better. It blew some stuff out. Looks like there's a high speed on there too. The way they designed this, it looks like this fan can easily be changed. Just take a couple nuts off and it pulls right out. So I'm probably going to send the incorrect Rock Auto one back and then cross the bridge when I come to it. This heater core is a little green up on top, and sometimes when they're green like that, it's where they're leaking. But this really isn't a place where I think this would leak. The rest of it looks good. So I think I'm just going to clean her up and throw her back in there and cross my fingers. And that heater box seems like it's easy enough to get out where I could possibly take it out with the dash in place. So here's another look at my new firewall installation. Looks like that heater box overlaps quite a bit of this. And here's the old stuff. I'm going to work on getting it all out and cleaning up behind there and prepping it for the new stuff now. Looks like my new stuff should fit pretty good. Holes are all stamped in the same places. This orange you see here is like a spray-on adhesive, I believe, and I'm going to do the same thing when I install the new stuff. Here she's cleaned up. I went over it with a wire wheel and a Scotch-Brite wheel. Underneath where that heater core was some surface rust, so that needed some extra attention. And this factory installation up here, I just stuck back on with some Loctite. Most of it's in pretty good shape, so I'm not going to worry about it. Here's my door jamb, and in this corner here I'm going to add some stitch welding to try to strengthen the body. And then this will all be cleaned up with acetone, primer, and painted. I'll be brush painting it. Here's a look at that stitch welding. Also did some other welding on the floor, got that crack, and we'll be adding other welding wherever it looks like you could use it. We'll get it into some primer now.
You can see how a job can end up becoming daunting. It seems like it's never going to be finished. We're just going to have it, all prettied up before we put this stuff back on. She should last another 50 years. This was a major hole right here where he must have had a bunch of wires coming through. And when the original engine was blowing blow-by past the rings, it was killing the driver, so he had to close that off with a plug. We're only going down this far just to take care of the heater, and then later on the whole floor pan will be primed and painted.
The firewall is painted black now. I just did a little bit because the goal is to get the heater box mounted back on there. Meanwhile, Paul over here is working on the windshield. We removed it since the dash was out so we can do any repairs to the channel if there's any rust. The channel actually looks really good though. I'm cleaning up the heater box now, and inside there's a flap. And I bought a new gasket kit for it, and in the kit is a new gasket for the flap, along with all the gaskets for the heater core. Here's some more of the gaskets. This one will go on the flap. And this kit's actually for a later model, but it looks like it's going to work. Here's the heater core. We already have a couple glued on there. We're trying to dampen any vibrations the heater core will see. Here's a front sealing gasket.
Yeah, if you got this thing bouncing around, this is just brittle copper, and just the action. A lot of guys just pulling the hose off, crack them. You got to be really careful. You're better off taking a knife and cutting the hoses just to get them off, because this is a hassle getting to it. If you'd seen all the work he did taking the heater box off, it's a pain in the butt. And like you said, you don't want to have this thing rattling around while you're driving, and the heater door flap, if that doesn't seal, when you don't have air conditioning, the passenger getting hot air blowing on his feet is very uncomfortable in the middle of summer.
Here's a flap on, I don't know if it would be called a blend door, but now we're ready to put the heater core in and get ready to install this blower motor housing back onto the firewall with the new installation. Here's the heater core installed with gaskets on all four sides, and it's in there good and firm. Now to put some adhesive here on the top gasket that seals up on the cowl there.
Well, you can tell which side you put the glue on is because they've put a sealant over the open cell foam. That way the glue has something to stick to instead of, eating away at foam. Because a lot of times there's lacquer in the glue and it'll eat up foam.
Here's the heater box installed. There's a second flap that can have a gasket replaced on it here for the defroster floor. And the installation turned out pretty good. We are going to have to get a bigger Christmas tree type plug for this hole. Here's a look at it from the outside. That heater core is in there good and solid now.
So we finally got the windshield all cleared out and got the area ready for paint, because this is unprepared right now, and they're going to use a new style of bonding agent for the windshield glass to become a part of the car. It's a urethane seal that hardens, and when it's bonded to the glass in the car, it'll make this like a structure of one piece. Whereas before, it just had this soft butyl rubber like tar, and the glass kind of floated in here. And from the accidents that this thing has been in, we could end up telling that there was body movement here, not much, but just enough, where we used the original glass that he had a guy come and take it out and cleaned it all up. We would use that as a template, and by the time we got this thing all shaped, the glass fits flush, and you put a putty knife in between there, and it's laying in there just perfect. So now he's got to end up priming this, painting it, and then the guy will reinstall the new glass. While we were doing this, I was telling him a story about how back in the old days with the old rubber, my friends had ended up working on a 66 Le Mans. And the thing only had one brake working. And they're laughing, everybody's having a gay old time. And they put a 421 Pontiac engine out of a GTO into this Le Mans. And the father comes out and says, "You're not taking that thing out with those brakes like that." He goes, "We're just taking it out for a test drive." And because we lived out in the country, a lot of times you drive around and never even see another car. Well, this thing, it really hauled ass, and they got carried away, and they were flying down this area that it's downhill, and there's a curve, and the ditches out in the country are like, you know, you could drive a car through them, you know, they're huge. And the guy that was driving lost control, and when they were going so fast that when they hit that, they come flying out. The car flipped, and none of them were wearing seatbelts. There was 3 guys in the car. When it flipped, it landed right like this, you know, like the windshield hit, and the driver came through, and he stayed with the glass and didn't get a scratch on his body. And the other 2 guys were severely injured. The engine ripped out, the tranny cracked in half, the car was destroyed, then it was junk, and the guy that was driving really got in a lot of trouble. But that's just to tell you, you know, how the windshields used to be bonded in before, you know, it just popped out. Now they make them where, you know, with it being a solid part of the car, that glass would have held him inside the car and he would have gotten hurt too.